Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you and welcome to Islam and Life with me, Tariq Ramadan, broadcasting from London. In today's show we ask the question, what investments should UK Muslims make in their growing communities?
The population of Muslims in Britain is rising. A recent analysis of census figures shows that almost 1 in every 10 children under the age of 5 is a Muslim. The Office for National Statistics reported that out of 3.5 million children up to the age of 4 in England and Wales, a significant 320,000 were Muslim. Oxford University demographics professor David Coleman said the figures were startling. He said that continuing immigration from Pakistan, Bangladesh and India have been added to by new immigration from African countries and from the Middle East. The British Department for Education has listed 136 Muslim schools, with about 125 of them in the private sector. The 2011 census in the UK showed a 13% drop in the Christian population of England and Wales. This week on Islam and Life, we ask, what investments should UK Muslims make in their growing communities?
This is what we hear from lots of political trends in Europe and in the UK. Populists are saying Muslims are growing and our society is in danger because they are changing the identity. But beyond the figures and beyond what is said, if we look at the two main reasons why Muslims and the Muslim communities are growing in the UK as everywhere else in Europe is mainly that the families have more children and immigration, people coming from Pakistan, people coming from Asia, but also now people coming from Africa or the Middle East. And these are the two main reasons. Beyond the figures, what is important is the responsibility within for the Muslims. How do they have to deal with the number? In which way these communities could be an added value to the society, and how they have to deal with the challenges ahead. And these are questions that are important beyond the populist discourse, coming to the civil society, coming to education, coming to living together. And to answer all these questions, I'm joined by my guest, filmmaker for the Salam Project, Lokman Heron. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let me start with what we just watched in the VT and what is said about the Muslim community in the UK, because some politicians are using this to spread around fear about the Muslim presence. How would you explain, in fact, that even after two, 3 or 4 generations, the Muslims are still, and the Muslim families are having more children and they are growing and growing within. So this is an internal factor.
Yeah, I think the reason why the population is growing from both within the community and people who are becoming Muslim in big numbers is simply because we're living in a time where nationally in our country, people are looking for individualism. They're looking for a way to be different. And I think what Islam does is it gives people an identity. It gives them a way to feel a belonging to a group of people. And I think being born Muslim myself, even though I'm from a Caribbean background, I still feel I have my identity within that. And I think whether you're from a Pakistani background, an African background, whatever it is, the identity holds strong regardless of where you're from. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of it.
Yes, that's important. It's how the Muslims are perceiving themselves.
Exactly,
and their own.
And I think that's something that non-Muslims in this country strive for in their own way. When you see stuff on television, a lot of the adverts are about how to be different or how to have your own personality or be individual. I think Islam naturally gives that to you, and it allows you to express your own individualism or your own personality within your own religion, which I think is one of the cornerstones of why this religion can spread and go so far.
So that's a very important point. If now we try to go a step further to try to understand in fact, very often when you talk to Muslims, they are very happy with the figures. I say, look, now we are growing. It's becoming, you know, the first growing religion in Europe and even in the UK. Now we come to the responsibilities, because we are talking here about investment and how do we have to deal with the challenges. So for this growing community, what would be the main challenges that you see? You are a young British Muslims or a Muslim, you know, with a specific origin, but still you are living in the UK. How do you see the future? What are the main challenges?
Well, it's very difficult to say, because we're living in a very unique time where, on a negative side, there are people who call themselves Muslims and are committing atrocities and bad things in this country and doing it in the name of Islam. So I think it is very important that we come together and find a way to find that identity and put the right positive light of Islam out. But I think it's very tricky to do that, simply because as a community, as a ummah, we are not united, I don't feel. We don't have a way, we don't have a name or a personality that can speak for us. So it's hard for us to gather together in that sense.
Yes, but there is something which is, you know, what we have coming from the governments. Very often in Europe, we had the same in the States after September the 11th, but what we had here in the UK, it's this, you know, rhetoric about, you know, terrorism and violence, and we have to be. We know that this is not the main challenge. This is the challenge that is sometimes even instrumentalized in a way which is negative. If we look at the situation within, here we have a very important community. We have, you know, the numbers as to the young children under 5, for example. It's just the percentage, it's just growing, and this means that in the future the Muslim community is going to be involved in the society at all, in all the fields at different levels. So what are the main challenges when it comes to such a growing community? Where do you expect the Muslims to put their energy and even their money?
I think it's tricky, because that's evolving and that's changing. When you talk about the young kids between up to 5 years old and how we have 1 in 5, I think the tricky thing is, it's all about us finding a way for Islam to live in Britain and for it to be natural. When you go to Morocco, or when you go to Turkey or Africa, Western Africa, you find Islam, but you find Islam that is natural to that place. It's natural to Moroccans, it's natural to West Africans, if it's Nigerians or Turkish people. The problem is for the young people here, although we have a connection in that we're all Muslim, there isn't really an Islam that is natural for Britain itself. And I think that's why there is this huge conflict, and there is so much press on Islam. You know, you can talk about Islam and everyone will stand up and listen, simply because they know that there's this natural conflict. Some of the things that we believe in as Muslims directly conflict with what the people of this country believe. So I think it's hard for us to naturally I think we almost jump in the gun by saying, well, how do we invest our money? I think we almost need to clarify for ourselves, well, what does Islam look like in Britain first before we can go ahead and start to put that together? But
you are saying something which is quite important. The responsibility lies on the Muslims, and especially, you know, the leadership and the Muslim scholars is, what do we want? But at the end, I will know what you want if you tell me where you are putting your energy and where you are putting your money as well. And very often the problem that we have with Muslim communities, it was normal a few years ago to start building mosques, because this was the understanding that we are settling down. This is meaning we are at home here, but beyond the mosques, what should the Muslims do in order to improve the means and also their own situation in the country?
I think that goes to a direct problem that I find a lot of young people have at this point in time, where they kind of live a dual life. They might go to the Friday prayer, and they go to the mosque to do their prayers, but then they have this separate life where they work and they study kind of outside of Islamic organizations. I think what we need to do then is invest money and put our time and effort into creating a way for young Muslims to be able to work and actually live and study within our own institutions. I think if we then do that, then it allows them to not just cut off from their Islam from when they leave their home or when they leave their parents' home from when they're 18 years old, and actually continue to live their life as Muslims in every part of their day. I think
it's interesting, but isn't it dangerous if you have your own institutions, if you live with Muslims and only with Muslims in an isolated way? At the end, what you were saying is that we need to know where we are. Is it your country or is it not? But if you are creating a parallel system, it could be dangerous.
I think I agree with you, but I think in terms of what we want to invest in, that's what I meant in that sense. But I still think we do need to set that agenda, and it needs to happen quite naturally. I think we discuss these topics a lot, but also we have to accept at the same time that Islam has been here, we could say, for 20 or 30 years prominently. So it's going to take time. I don't think we can naturally say that we can have the answer straight away. But these things, by doing these things, what I'm saying is by doing these things, by setting up those avenues and those businesses, we create almost, you could say, the conflict for the problems to have. We have those problems with the outer world. But naturally, we will sort of start to adjust and know how to make those things natural for the people outside. But I think you have to have action. I was recently...
But yes, go ahead.
I was recently watching a documentary about when the EDL leader, Tommy Robinson, met Mo Ansar, and about and basically the documentary is about going from beginning to end, how his conflict with Mo Ansar, he actually eventually kind of came to understand a lot more about Islam and realizing that being extremist against Islam wasn't the way forward. And then he found Quilliam, which was the way to kind of find that middle way to tackle extremism on both sides. So I think in that instance, that is it in a nutshell. I don't think we need to be so scared of the conflict and the issues that we have in the press at the moment. It's actually good, because by that conflict, what happens is people then understand about Islam, they start to learn about it. For example, with Tommy Robinson, there was a scene with him and he pulled out the Quran and started to talk about certain verses in a negative sense. But in that instance, that's what we want. We want non-Muslims to have to conflict with us, and then they thereby learn about our own religion.
But once again, what you are talking about here is our relationship with others outside the community and the perception. You have some quite extremist views coming from populists that saying that by definition Islam cannot stay in the UK. Islam is alien to the British culture, alien to the European culture. On the other side, our answer could be, look, we will have our own institutions, we will have our own schools, we'll have our own businesses. So we are, in fact, mirroring the discourse coming from populists. And the other way could be, yes, it's a growing community. These are citizens, and in fact, they should be mainstream. They should be visible everywhere, and they have to invest in schools and in education, in businesses, but mainstream. What would you say to that?
I 100% agree, but I think I still continue with what I was saying. But I say the difference, what I didn't get to kind of finish, is saying that what I also think is very important is that the young people, the people who grew up in this country, regardless of where their parents are from, I think they should be the people that are pushed forward to sort of start to find their own way, because they know.
But that's exactly my point. Can you elaborate on that? What does it mean to find their own way in Britain, for example, knowing that this community is going to, the number is growing, the Muslims are going to stay, they are at home here, they are British, so what does it mean, find your own way?
I think by acting upon what they feel is right. And that might sound wide and loose, but that's what I was trying to say about Islam has only been here for, say, 20 or 30 years prominently. So I think it's hard.
It's much more than that. It's two generations, three generations.
In terms of in big numbers. That's what I mean.
The new reality of
the new reality of the situation we're in. So all I'm saying is that in order for that to really find its way, it needs to be given the backing and the pushing to sort of find its own way. It's not going to have the answer. No one's going to have the answer in terms of, I think we should do this, or this is the way forward. I think it naturally, by trying things, by acting on it, but not in the sense of people who necessarily have come here, for people who have grown up here, because they've grown up with non-Muslim friends. They've gone to public schools. They know what it's like to work in the local Sainsbury's or the Tesco. They have a feel for the people around them because they've grown up here. So they're also, in their heart, connected to the issues that are of this country. So they'll naturally have an inkling of a way to go forward, but they won't have all the answers. But they need to be given a chance.
Let me take your example. You are running or a member of this Salam project. You have been working at the grassroots level. If you look at what is happening now in the Muslim community, what would be for you the main priorities now when it comes to the future for the Muslim community in this country?
I feel I don't want to sound pious, but I feel what I'm trying to do, because I'm not only working in the Salam Project, I've also got my own media business called C Media. I've got various different ventures that I'm trying to be part of, and I think that's what a lot of, for example, I've been supported by the community that I've come from in Norwich, which is a community there, and I think because of that support, it's allowed me to try lots of different things. Simply because I'm not saying I have the answer, but I know the answer is by acting and going on your gut feeling, but with support from the older generation.
But what is interesting in your case is that you are involved in the media, you are involved in communication, which once again is exactly opposite of isolating yourself. Communication means to interact and to be proactive within your society.
Exactly. So I do feel that they need to be given ventures where, when I say set up businesses, I don't mean alone and just for the Muslims. I mean businesses that inherently have to connect and have to deal with non-Muslims on a day-to-day basis. Because from when I look at my life from now, say the last 4 or 5 to 6 years, the amount of interaction I've had with non-Muslims, I know that's done a lot of good. I'm not saying I've had 1 shahada, 2 shahadas, 3 shahadas, but I know it's done a lot of good for people to understand what I'm about. Because through what I've created, whether it be a video or a press release, people can read my work or watch my work and get a different perspective knowing that I'm Muslim, because they will see in its own way my work from an Islamic perspective. They'll hear it, they'll understand it in a different way. It's just like anything. It's like in Hollywood. Hollywood used to be quite a white thing, you could say, but bit by bit now we've had more and more ethnic minorities that are actors, directors, part of the industry in general. And then you're seeing, say, the films nowadays. You've got 12 Years a Slave, which is a recent film that's just come out, from a whole different perspective that you probably wouldn't have so much 50 years ago. But by watching that film, you can gather a new understanding. So I just mean we need to be kind of part of society. And if you're asking where should people put their money, put it in the young people that are trying to do something. Support them, guide them, but allow them to sort of lead the way for you, because they've been brought up here. They have a feel for what's wrong or right, and what will feel alien.
So let me tackle 2 things, because here we are talking about the perception others have of Muslims. But if we come within now, a growing community means also potential, multiplication of divisions. So what also is our responsibility, or could be the responsibility of young Muslims like yourself within the community? Because at the end, the surrounding society could use so many different reasons to divide the community, and it's happening. We can see this.
That's $1 million question, if you like to say. I think one of the big things would be to sort of go back to making things a bit more simpler, I feel, for young Muslims. I think, as you said, through the divisions, it's kind of come from its evolution in a sense. And I think if we can kind of go back, it sounds basic, but almost go back to basics in a sense and make things easier for people to understand and connect to. I think if we then sort of, you don't want to say brand Islam, but if we connect to each other through organizations.
So it has to do also with education?
Yeah, you could say it's to do with education. Yeah, exactly. You could say it's to do with education. Yeah.
And you are a young British Muslim, you live here, and you know what is happening around the world. And this is also something which is quite important, is that how are we going to influence in a positive way? Because democracy, it's about also number, and number means that you need to put or to have a clear agenda that if we are for justice, not only for Muslims, justice for all, it means that we have to be involved in domestic and international politics in order to be the voice for the voiceless. In fact, in the UK, can you see among the young people that you are seeing that they are much more committed to political activism or engagement?
I think they are, but I think like any group of people, you have some people out of a group of young people that will be interested in politics, and you will have some that aren't. But I don't think that's anything particularly positive or negative. I think that's just the way the people are. If you look at non-Muslims, you have a group of young people from the non-Muslim group that will be interested in politics and some that aren't. I think what we also need to do is, I do think we need to focus on being politically active, but what I think we should also do is support the other young Muslims who don't necessarily want to be politically active but have a different way of helping that voice or changing our identity or how we're seen or perceived in this country. So whatever it might be that they want to do, any other enterprise that they have in mind or a different way of approaching it, I think we should look at that and open the dialogue for that. Because I think by saying, well, how are we going to politically be active, you cut off probably about 60% of young people. Because there's a huge amount of young people that, not positive or negative, they're just not necessarily as interested in politics as, say, another group are. But they do want to be active. So I think there's this whole other group that we should try to connect with by giving them.
But how? You are right. Many are not going to be involved in politics. Still, they are British. They are working within a community where there are sometimes divisions. So they have an inward responsibility. We also are facing, you were referring to some political groups today where, there is something even in the UK which has changed, is the perception of Islam, which is quite negative. So if you are just, having a discourse saying we are nice, we are good people, Islam is all, it's not like this that you are going to change mentality. It's a struggle for rights. So what could be the role of the young Muslims today for that, quite quickly?
I think, to be honest, I do think that it needs support from the older generation. I do feel that in the same way that the non-Muslim groups or the non-Muslims, they support their hard-to-reach kids. By doing different activities. Lots of organisations have things like BBC Blast for people in media, where they work with hard-to-reach kids or people that aren't maybe academically focused. I think there's a huge amount of young people in our own community that aren't necessarily academically or politically focused. I think if we put our investments in those people, I think we could see great things come from it.
Thank you so much. Listening to you as a young Muslim, British Muslim, or living in Britain with so many challenges, and when we look at the figures, what you are saying is quite important, is the responsibility. In fact, listening to you, it's multi-dimensional. It's not only about education, but it could be about communication. It could be to deal with the society, understanding that we are facing bad perceptions out there, but at the same time we have responsibility within, and it has to do with politics, but it has to do with social commitment, it has to do with culture, it has to do with communication and even arts. These are investments that are very important. Well, that's all we have time for. Please let us know your thoughts and views on any of the show you have seen, and here is the way to contact us.
We at Islam and Life would like to hear your views about the subjects that we discuss. We would also love to hear your suggestions for our program, so get in touch with us. You can share your thoughts with other Islam and Life fans, engage in debate, and find out how to watch our previous shows. Follow us on Twitter at Islam and Life TV, or join us on Facebook by liking our page, Islam and Life on Press TV.
Finally, I would like to thank my guest, Luqman Heron. Thank you so much for your presence and your input, and I hope to see you next week, inshallah.